Dad.
Okay, so my dear friends, welcome to tonight's class. We are on Parasha's Shmini. Parasha's Shmini is actually a story which took place exactly 3,333 years ago. 3,333. Very easy to remember. This is just about celebrating the first year anniversary from the Exodus of Egypt. It's just Mitzrayim. It's just 2 weeks before, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That was the day that the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was established and dedicated. It was already built a few months earlier, but it wasn't yet ready to be serviced as a Mishkan. It was 7 days before the story of this week's Parsha, in which Moshe is serving as the acting high priest, serving as the one who is training the Kohanim in their service, which they will continue to do, God willing, for the rest of their lives. Moshe was not a Kohen. Moshe was a Levi. His brother Aaron was chosen to be the Kohen. So now Moshe is just serving as a Kohen in order to train the Kohanim to be able to know what to do and how to do, when to do. And that was going on for 7 days. Every day they built the Mishkan. At night they dismantled it. So it continued the next day. And it was going on for a full week. Then comes the beginning of this parsha, which the name of the parsha is actually Shmini. The word Shmini means 8, because we are now the 8th day, 1 day, following the 7-day training by Moshe. And this is actually happening on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the first day of the new month of Nisan, which is the first month on the Jewish calendar. Matter of fact, this coming Shabbat is the Shabbat which we are going to bless the new month of Nisan. And 1 week after the Shabbat is going to be Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Rosh Chodesh is also going to be actually on Shabbat, a week from this Shabbat. So on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it was also the 8th day of the dedication. And officially, this is the happiest day and the most joyful day for all the people in the desert. Why is it the happiest day? Because this is the day that the temple is going to formally and officially begin its service. And this is the day that God's presence is going to dwell. Hashem's presence is going to actually come down into the tabernacle, and we are going to be able to meet up with him, and he is going to be able to meet up with us. This is going to be the funnest day of not only the year, the funnest day for Jewish history, especially that we went through such a difficult time with the worshiping of the golden calf. Months earlier, God's being very angry, looking perhaps to get rid of all of us. And yet finally came the forgiveness on Yom Kippur. And the forgiveness came together with an announcement that you are going to build me a home. Ve'asuli migdash ve'shachanti betocham, make me a sanctuary, and I'm ready to dwell in your midst. This was the most exciting, happiest day on the calendar. And Aaron is now going to serve as the Kohen Gadol, as the high priest, in the temple, together with his children. He had 4 children. The first name was Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Itamar, 4 boys. And as the Torah begins this parsha, at the peak of the joy is when tragedy strikes. At the very happy moment, in the happiest place, in the sanctuary itself, in the holiest part of the sanctuary, Aaron's 2 sons lost their lives. And it became seemingly a day of tragedy, a day of mourning. There is a very interesting response of Aaron when he sees it all happening. The Torah tells us 2 words. If you look in the Chumash, on chapter 9, and the Torah tells us on chapter 10, after it talks about their death, it says on verse 3, Moshe is speaking to Aaron, trying to comfort him, and he tells them, God said, I will be sanctified to the example I will make of those whom I've chosen to be nearest to me. And in the same way, I will be honored before the people. And he gives them this all words of comfort. And the Torah says, Vayidoim Aaron, and Aaron remained silent. This was the response of Aaron. Aaron were silent, which means accepting God's decree and Moshe's consolation, not saying anything. Didn't complain, didn't start arguing. He accepted it. This is the power of silence. And the same day, there was another discussion and debate between Aaron and his brother. What was the debate? That was obviously being one of the days that you offer the sacrifices. It was Rosh Chodesh, it was the new beginning of the new month. And they were also offering sacrifices because they dedicated the temple and all this together. And at that point, what you do with the sacrifices is that you need to eat. You need to eat their meat. The halacha is, according to Torah law, that a mourner, there are 2 stages to a mourner. Even in today's day and age, there are 2 stages to a mourner. There is the stage of mourning which occurs between the moment of death and burial. This is stage 1. And then there is post-burial till the end of the Shiva, the end of the 7 days of mourning. The first chapter, which it can take an hour, it can take a couple of hours, it can sometimes take even a couple of days, depends how long it takes between death and burial. The name of the mourner is called Onen. Onen is a strict stage of mourning, which the Torah does not want you, the surviving family member, to be occupied with anything else other than thinking and making sure that the deceased is fully cared for. Burial arranged, eulogy arranged, whatever needs to be taken care of the deceased is the entire preoccupation of the surviving family member. So according to Torah law, if it happens during the week, you would not put on tefillin, you would not go to daven, you're not saying any prayers, we don't want your blessings. It doesn't mean you can go and follow the negative prohibitions too, and to say I don't have to do anything, God forbid. You have to keep to the Torah laws. Everything that you're not supposed to do throughout the year, you continue in not doing. But those what you need to do, it involves action, like prayers and tefillin and other positive mitzvot, you are abstaining from. You are not involved in them. Why? Because you are now caring completely to ensure that the funeral and everything else and the burial is all taken care of 100%. Similarly, that first stage of mourning is a time period that you are forbidden from eating meat and drinking wine. You can eat parv, you can eat nochek, but no meat. That stage is no meat, no steak, no salami, no hot dogs. Then, when you come back from the burial, from the funeral, then comes the second stage of mourning, that you have to sit on a small chair, and you are not to engage in any work, and you have to sit, wear your, not to wear leather shoes, and onward. But you're obviously becoming again back with the responsibilities of commandments. So you're going to put on tefillin during the shiva, you're going to daven, and you are allowed to eat meat, and you are allowed to drink wine. You're allowed to do all this during the shiva. It's not like the 9 days that you are mourning of the destruction of the temple, and you don't even eat meat or drink wine. That's a different type of mourning. There's various types of mourning in Jewish law. There is the mourning of someone who's very close to you, a relative who passes away. One type of mourning. There is the mourning of the 9 days before Tisha B'Av. There is the mourning of the counting of the Omer, the death of Rabbi Akiva's students, that we don't have weddings, but at the same time you do many other things. There's all kinds of different levels, and every type of experience shares and carries its own set of mourning. Here, what happened on the day of the tragedy is something very interesting happened. They have the special sacrifices which were offered that day in honor of the dedication of the temple. This was unique sacrifices, never to be repeated again. This was only a part of the celebration of the dedication. In addition, they also had sacrifices which were offered due to the obligations of the day as a generic day on the Jewish calendar. What was the day? The day was Rosh Chodesh. And Rosh Chodesh, there is a special goat offering that is being offered every single Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of a new month. What happened? Aaron was eating the meat, even though it was before burial, he was eating the meat of the special offerings which were not to be offered later in life. It was only unique to that particular experience, the dedication of the Mishkan. But the meat of the Rosh Chodesh, the new month offering, he did not touch. He allowed it to be completely burned on the altar. Moshe came to Aaron and he says, what happened? What happened to that goat? Take a look if you want to see it in the Parsha. It is it is on chapter 10. On chapter 10, verse 16. This is where the story goes. That there was the Seira Chatos. It was the Rosh Chodesh goat offering that Moshe was looking and trying to understand what happened, why wasn't it eaten. He actually got angry on Aaron, even though he lost his sons. He still was angry and upset that he doesn't follow the orders. And Aaron explains them in verse 19, the difference between the extra unusual offerings and those which were offered in honor of Rosh Chodesh, which he said, for these offerings, we will apply the regular rule, which is the rule of not to eat meat during that first stage of mourning. So this is the story in this parsha. Now, there's a lot to talk about this. And through the years, we spoke about this and many other things, but because Shmini is a very, very, very interesting parsha, deals with tragedy, responding to tragedy. This parsha also tells us the laws of kashrut. Right after the temple is dedicated, they are being told which meat they should eat and what they should not eat, and how important it is to observe the dietary laws, and so on. But I would like to talk this week more about Aaron. Aaron, trying to understand Aaron. Usually we talk about Moshe. Let's talk about Aaron a little bit. Something that we find very unique about Aaron. Like I said, the moment of Shmini, this 8th day, if you look in the Parsha, the fire is coming down from heaven. They raised all the money, a half a year of preparations, getting the Mishkan ready. Everything is unbelievable. And this is like where the way it's being described in the Medrash and in Kabbalah. This is the way the groom is coming close to the bride who is waiting for him under the chuppah, ready to unite as a husband and wife. And the truth is, there was a lot of, in Hebrew, they call it metach. You know, metach is suspension. It wasn't so obvious that because we made a Mishkan and you built a home for God, and therefore you can be sure that the groom is going to arrive to the wedding just because the bride is all dressed and ready for him. There was a lot of tension. If you put it in the context, we are coming still overwhelmed with the sin of the golden calf and all what it took. And it was not clear, is God really going to move away and forget about everything and just come and be with us and come celebrate this tremendous wedding? If you look in Rashi, Rashi says that it wasn't so clear. Rashi says in the Parsha that Moshe came on verse 23, chapter 9, it says, Vayovoi Moshe ve'Aaron and Oyel Moyed. Moshe and Aaron went into the tent of meeting, right? So obviously Moshe is going in. He wants to instruct Aaron how to perform the offering, especially the offering of the incense. And also he wanted to pray to God himself, right? So he goes in, and then Vayetzu, they came out, Vayevarchu esa'am, and they blessed the people. They gave him a beautiful blessing. They said the same verse, which is written actually in Psalms, chapter 90, V'noyam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu, may the pleasantness of Hashem, our God, His presence rest upon us, B'masa yodeinu koineneu, in all what we done. It was giving a bracha. Hashem's presence shall actually dwell in all you what you did. Should all be accomplished. And Rashi said something very interesting, that for the 7 days of dedication, Moshe put up the Mishkan every single day, and he also dismantled that every single day. Those days, the Shechina, the divine presence, did not dwell in the Mishkan. That was a part of training in one end. But at the same time, the Jewish people were getting very agitated. And they looked at Moshe and they said, Moshe Rabbeinu, All which we have worked and labored and toiled, and we gave away our gold, our silver, our copper. Everything was to have God's presence dwell among us, with us. It was all for us that we wanted to know and to confirm that the sin of the golden calf was actually forgiven. That was the plan. And take a look. 7 days, nothing is going on. And Moshe tells to the Jewish people that which is written earlier, that Moshe called Aaron, because he tells them, hold on. If you look on verse 6, he tells them, the following what Hashem has commanded us to do, and the glory of God will appear before you. What do we need to do? We got to bring in Aaron to the spiel. And that's what all this verse says, between verse 6 till verse 23 is all about the story, what Aaron should do. Because Moshe tells them, God did not come down yet because I was just acting as high priest in the training process. But the one who is really going to channel godliness into the Mishkan, you know who this is? This is going to be Aaron, my brother. He is the one. And here comes the big question. Can Aaron really serve as the conduit to channel godliness into the Mishkan? Let's think about it. Why were they nervous? They were nervous because of the sin of the golden calf. That's what they were nervous about. Not only nervous, that's why they were so inspired to build the Mishkan, because they really were seeking the forgiveness to make sure that it was already done and over with. In that case, let's go back a second to the story of the golden calf and to remind ourselves what was Aaron's position in that terrible moment. If you remember, it's all in the Chumash. Moshe was about to come down from heaven. I'm going to just review the story in short. Moshe is about to come down from heaven on the 15th day of Tammuz in the afternoon, but somehow he wasn't seen anywhere. Another hour passes, and the people which were called the Erev Rav, the multitude of people, this was mainly idol worshippers who somehow cling themselves to join the Jewish community, kept on raising and dripping all these doubts. What's going on? What does he think? Is he coming back? Does anybody ever come back from heaven? And slowly, they're all getting hysterical and realizing slowly that, perhaps we are stuck. Millions of people are stuck in the desert. Moshe is not coming back. We are stuck without a leader. Where are we going from here? It's all over. And those Erev Rav, those multitude people, started pressuring them. Let's try to create a substitute. Let's get a replacement. And they went over to the leaders asking for a replacement. The first person they went to was actually to a man with the name of Hur. Hur was the son of Miriam. And they said, Hur, come on, you're a man of wisdom, you're a leader. Perhaps can you create for us some type of God, some type of Moses? And he got so angry. He said, what are you, crazy? What are you talking about? Moshe is coming back. And they got so meshuga, they stabbed him to death. Hur was stabbed to death by those people. And from there, they were rushing to Aaron. And what was Aaron's response? Aaron, as we explained before, earlier class, Aaron was looking what we call in English to buy time. Sometimes buying time is the method how you perhaps going to deal with a difficulty, because as more time you have, you hope that the situation will get resolved and somehow Mashiach will come. Doesn't always work, but sometimes buying time is a good, gives you at least a few more days to develop a plan. And buying time is it's worth the money sometimes to buy time. It's worth the effort to buy time. Aaron is trying to buy time. How do you buy time? He asks them for their jewelry in order to create that image. Obviously, you're going to ask him for jewelry. People are ready to get very excited, but till the point where they have to give away something which is very dear to themselves, right? Then is when they start thinking twice. So he says, go to your wives and ask them they should give their hearings. Aaron he really hoped that the woman with their strong emunah, with their strong faith, will obviously not participate in the crime, will definitely reject that request. And he was right. The woman, Take, told all the men, we are not doing it. This is not a place to create something new. What did the men do? They took off their own jewelry. Men also wore jewelry, and they were also loaded. And they went and they took off their own jewelry. And Aaron himself took the gold from all the jewelries together, and he threw it into the fire. And lo and behold, came out what? The golden calf. So tell me, honestly, Aaron, I understand he tried to buy time. Everything is good. To the bottom line, Aaron is definitely a part of the problem. He's a part of the problem. And if he's a part of the problem, how does he become part of the solution? He is the one that is responsible, perhaps, to the golden calf. And now you're taking the same Aaron, and you say, you know what, Aaron, we're going to build a Mishkan, and Hashem is going to come down to the Mishkan, and it's going to be a part of us. By the way, there's a famous Talmudic statement which repeats itself in a number of areas, which says as follows: Ein kategor nase sanegor. Kategor in Hebrew means a prosecutor, someone who comes to prosecute. Sanegor is a defender. So the Gemara says that you cannot use the same person whose job is to prosecute, that he should also serve as a defender. The Gemara uses it, by the way, in a number of classic things. For example, on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol, when he walked into the Holy of Holies, his garments were made of plain white cotton. Throughout the year, he was wearing gold and the bells and all kinds of fancy vestments known as the 8-pier vestments of the high priest. But on Yom Kippur, when it came to walk into the Holy of Holies, he had to change his clothes, moving away the beautiful golden breastplate and the other jingly bells, and getting in with simple white cotton clothes to the Holy of Holies. And the Talmud says, why can't he come in with his gold? What's wrong with walking in Yom Kippur with gold? Says the Gemara, you know what? Because the gold is a reminder of the golden calf. And you are here standing, defending the Jewish people, So you can't come in with something which will prosecute them, something which will be used against them. The moment God sees gold, he's going to say, oh, you're talking to me about forgiveness? I see gold. And you know what that gold tells me? Oh, they were the golden calf and they didn't care after everything. So Aaron knows no gold in the Holy of Holies. You come in there, you come in purely white, so no mentioning of gold. For the same reason, by the way, even though on Yom Kippur there was offered a, what's it called? On Yom Kippur they were also offering a bull, a par, a cow, but he brought into the Holy of Holies, he only sprinkled the blood of it. There was no entry, there was no piece of the meat of the cow which was brought into the Holy of Holies, only the blood. And why? For the same reason, because the cow reminds us the calf, and the calf is the golden calf, you know, which the par is the mother of the calf. That's practically how it is. So what's going to happen is that by offering or by bringing in some of the meat of the heifer, you are going to remind yourself and remind God about the golden calf. Don't fall asleep, anybody. Take a sip of water. Say l'chaim for a moment. You know, it's after Purim. Everybody's tired a little. L'chaim, l'chaim. Anyway, very good. Who is this young man? David G. What kind of David G is it? Say l'chaim. Look like a nice man. Good to see you drinking. So back to what we're discussing, the question is, what happens to Aaron? How are we using the same Aaron who was literally perhaps responsible in the story of the golden calf, and the same Aaron is now going to be in charge on the Mishkan of the atonement? Not only is the issue with Aaron somehow reminding us, Aaron himself, by his very existence, reminds us the story of the golden calf. Aaron was the one who built the altar, even though, like I said, buying time, postponing them, pushing them off. Practically speaking, Aaron built the altar for the golden calf. And now the question is, how is Aaron the one who is allowed to come and do the service in the Mishkan? Arnold, you want to hear a good joke to get you up? I heard a good joke this morning. That someone said that there was a priest and a rabbi and a Muslim clerk were all meeting up together. You know, one of those meetings that you know from all the other jokes. And they decided, you know, usually people come and confess to us and share their issues with us. We should try to confess to each other and to be able to be granted forgiveness by each other. So the priest begins and he says, I have really something to share. You know, donations come in to the church. I can't control myself. I put some of it in my pocket and it ends up in my hands. I really sincerely don't feel right. And I really want to apologize. And I really regret doing it. And they say, sure, forgiveness granted, it's done. Then the Muslim clerk says, you know, I want to share with you my weakness. You know, as a nice Muslim, I'm not forced to drink any alcohol. But I come home at night, I see that bottle of wine there, I really cannot control myself. I let myself go. The bottle gets consumed, but really, I know that it's not nice for a nice Muslim to do it. It's a weakness. I hope I can get your forgiveness and understand the sincerity of my regret. And they say, sure, forgiveness granted, and we're ready to move on. The Jewish rabbi says, I will tell you my weakness. My weakness is that whenever I hear someone doing something wrong, I really cannot control myself, and I must talk Lashon Hara to others. I must tell it over to other people. This is my weakness. You don't get it. Anyway, think about it later when you're going to get up. You got it. Anyway, Baruch Hashem. Took them for a half a minute. You're tired. You're forgiven. You're forgiven for that too. Anyway, back to the discussion. So the question is, what happens to Aaron? This is the dilemma that we are trying to deal with. How can the same Aaron, who seemingly is now used as a category, as a prosecutor, someone who can really bring up and remind the trouble of the golden calf, to be the same Aaron who is going to be in charge, and only Aaron. Moshe says, I'm sorry, don't look at me. 7 days I'm doing everything, but no. Wait, Aaron is going to come in. He's the one who is actually going to provide the opportunity for the Shechina, for the divine presence to come down. What's the word? So I learned a beautiful insight that's brought down by one of the early Hasidic masters. One of them is called the Moed Vashemesh. This is a book which was written by a Hasidic rabbi, actually in Krakow. And it also relates to what another opportunity in this week's Parsha, and this is that this Shabbat is also Shabbos Parshas Poro. Shabbos Parshas Poro, that we are going to read this Parsha also at Maftir, an additional reading, a small reading, which talks about the red heifer, which was used to purify people from their ritual impurities, especially those who came in contact with the death. In order to be able to regain their purity, there was sprinkled on them a mixture of ashes and water, which somehow by supernatural phenomenon brought about the purity for them. And we read it every year after Purim, before Pesach, with the belief that when Mashiach comes, we're all going to have to go through that cleansing process in order to be able to offer the Korban Pesach in Yerushalayim Bezrat Hashem this year. So we will soon see the connection to the story of the red heifer. But first, let's slowly go through the idea which is being explained in this Hasidic book, which will give us the answer why Aaron. Why is Aaron the leader when it comes to the Mishkan, and why you're taking someone which is seemingly part of the crime, if you want to be honest. And he explains basically like this. There is two types of tzaddikim. Tzaddikim is obviously Moshe is a tzaddik, Aaron is a tzaddik, righteous people, leaders, but there is two different types of leaders, and especially talking about lofty and righteous people. There are those who see the goal. Where are we getting to? Where are we heading to? Focus to the goal. And there are those who see the road, how to get to the goal. In other words, there are those visionaries that they like standing on top of the mountain and they see where the future leading to and what it should be like. And then there is the ones who are actually guiding us to the roads and the paths to get to the direction that we need to get to. We need both. We need these visionaries. We need the ones who have the vision and the perspective and the idea on where we should get as a people, both general as a people, as a nation, and as individuals. And then we need the ones who are going to be ready to guide us and hold our hand and take us through the direction, the way that we are all walking through. We need them both. But the truth is that between those two leaders, there is a very big gap. It's like almost two extreme type of people which somehow don't even come close to each other. The ones who see the goal are usually the type of people which are in their own being are kind of complete, perfect. They are complete in their essence. When they look on the world, they see it as a stepping board to climb somewhere higher. That's how they look on everything, to get higher, to get greater. For them, the world is not a challenge because they don't deal with the world. The world is not confusing them because they don't deal with it. They ignore it. They have nothing to do with the world. They have nothing to do with the world. They live in a whole different reality. They see where we're heading to. And if anything which exists is to get us higher and greater to finally reach the place where we are looking to get. Then there's the one who deals with us, the one who's the teacher, who deals with its student and is working with them, is trying them to get to the place where we need to get. The challenge is what it takes. It's almost the difference between a teacher and an educator. I once heard. What is the difference between a teacher? In Hebrew, a teacher is called moreh. And an educator is called mechanech. Mechanech. What is the difference? The teacher speaks above the head of the child. He only tells you what has to be done. This is the math, this is the history, this is the geography. I'm not going to figure out with you how you're going to do it. This is the information. The mechanech, the educator, is the one who speaks from the world of the students. A real mechanech, a real educator, is the one who himself had walked through that bumpy road what the student is going through. Nothing is self-understood. You understand that there is other options and there are challenges and we got to figure it out. I have to be convinced and be able to convince my student that this is really the way to go about things. It's not so simple. I was there when I was in your age. I also went through the challenges and I was also tempted and I also didn't want to. And nevertheless, I overcame that. And look is where I am, and this is the best life you can have, and the most meaningful life you can have. And that's how you take him through his own misery and challenge and get him to where he belongs. This is not the typical professor kind who's sitting there, pressing numbers, putting some information on the board, and goes home and figure it out because this is what we need to get, is to that grade and to that accomplishment and so on. Chassidus says that the difference between Moshe and Aaron, Kabbalah says really an interesting title, that Moshe is called the Unterführer. You know Unterführer is? When you go to the chuppah, so the one holding you, the parents are holding you down the chuppah. In Yiddish, it's called Unterführers. In Hebrew, it's called Shushvinim. So Kabbalah says that Moshe is called Shushvina de Malka. He's like the Unterführer of the king. He's like holding, so to speak, God's hand. He's the one who looks on the world from upward, downward, and he sees it in his perfect eyes. This is the perfect world that we are about to have. Aaron is Unterführer of the queen. The queen means he's the one who accepts the sacrifices, the sinners, with all their trumpet troubles, with all their tremblings, and he sees the Jews in their reality of life, in their challenging life, and nevertheless works to awaken mercy by God over them and to bring them an atonement and to renew the love and connection that they have with Hashem. This is Aaron. This is not Moshe. In order to be a real conduit for this kapara, for this atonement that we have to go through, for Aaron to really represent us, Aaron himself has to be kind of challenged. He also has to be kind of cracked. He also has to understand and identify with the confusions of the person. He also has to have kind of the strive to become something higher, to become something greater. He has to know the fears and the challenges and how quick and light it is for us to fall and to stumble. He has to be in our shoes. He has to be able to identify with us. It is important in order to get upward, and it's important for us and for him in order to be able to really bring us closer. If Aaron is going to be like the Moshe kind of personality, that everything is perfect and everything is complete, and he only sees the world in his full goal of a pure and happy and healthy world, then he's never going to be able to bring us up, to really relate to us and to work with us. Aaron has to be a part of us. For Aaron's sake, the lack of completion is true completion. He can only serve the leader he is because he was involved in the golden calf. Because he was a part of it, and he saw it, and he really lived with it, therefore is he able to be identifying with what we need to go through. Which is, by the way, the story of the red heifer too. The Torah tells us that when it comes to bringing the red heifer, which is completely, like I said, completely irrational, it's called chukah. What does it mean, impurity? How do you sprinkle some water and ashes and somehow you regain your purity? And why does the heifer has to be red necessarily? What is it? She's not completely red. The whole thing is like esoterical 100%. Well, one of the very crazy, so to speak, esoterical things about the red heifer is, but our sages tell us that while the red heifer brings purity to those who were impure, the same people who were sprinkling the water had experienced a certain level of impurity that they need to now go to the mikveh themselves. It's called metame et hateorim. I'm sorry, metaher et hatmeim umetaher et hatmeim umetame et hateorim. They bring purity for those who were impure, and at the same time, those who were pure, which is they themselves, are becoming simultaneously affected by the impurity of Tumah. And you wonder, what is going on? How did they become tamei? How can somebody use water, which is to bring purity for somebody else, and to become impure himself? It's like telling, if you want to check someone for corona, you make sure that you also have corona yourself. What do you mean? I'm the doctor. I'm here to cure. I don't need to have it. So the Rebbe once said that this is exactly the secret, what Torah tells us how to help another individual. You want to help someone, don't just offer advice. Try to identify with him at the very same spot where he is suffering. To rescue someone from the sea, from the ocean, you must become wet. You have to perhaps put yourself a little bit in danger to jump into the water. You can't stand there on the bridge and give instruction. Hey, go here, take a swim there. He doesn't hear you. The guy is drowning. What kind of instructions? No one needs your advice now. Jump into the water if you can, if you're not going to die yourself, and help him pick it up. Get wet. If you're going to get wet, you might help him. You want to cause someone to become pure from a state of impurity? You're going to have to experience some of it. You're going to have to be able to identify with that. And the way you do it is, yes, you're going to become tummy for a little bit. You're going to have to go to the mikveh yourself. It's not going to be perfect. There's the famous story about the Rebbe always said that the second Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe, Reb Dov Ber, used to take people of a private audience, and all kinds of people, broken-hearted, spiritually, physically, they used to come into the room, and the Rebbe used to offer them advice. Suddenly, one day, in the middle of taking people, the Rebbe stops. He says, no, I can't take in people now. And then they found out, and he explained, that's what he said, that whenever a person comes into me, with whatever difficult situation he is, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, the Rebbe said, I identify with them by finding that something like it on a very, very delicate level, obviously, I also have. And therefore, when I'm thinking how I cure my own self of a similar issue, I can offer advice how he can cure himself. But then he said, today somebody came in and he shared such a difficult problem that he's dealing with, and I literally could not figure out why would I hear something like that if there is nothing close on the most delicate level. There's nothing which I can identify with such an issue. There's no way I can find it in my own being. I had to stop until finally I thought to myself, maybe I lost attachment to people. Maybe I shouldn't see people anymore. If I cannot see in myself what he is going through, to be able to find it in me, so then I can really identify with him and offer him advice, so then I cannot see people anymore. I'm detached from people. And then later something dawned on him, and he was able to regain his strength. The Rebbe used to say a story that the fifth Rebbe, Reb Shalom Dov Ber, and his brother, he had an older brother, his name was Reb Zalman Aaron. And they were once playing a game. You know what the game was? Rebbe and Chassid. Zalman Aaron is the Rebbe. They were little boys, 5-year-old boys. Zalman is the Rebbe, and his younger brother is the Chassid, the follower of the Rebbe, which comes in and visits his Rebbe and asks him for a blessing. I guess that's what they saw in their house, and that's what they played. So the story that the Rebbe said, Zalman Aaron is sitting on a chair, all serious. He's acting the Rebbe. The younger brother comes over and he says, Oi, Rebbe, I did something such and such. I need you to help me how to repair it. His brother looks at him and he says, oh, how to repair it? You should do such and such. You should give tzedakah. You should say tehillim. Boys are playing. The younger brother, which later became Rebbe after the fifth Rebbe, tells his oldest brother, I'm sorry, you're not a Rebbe. So he said, what do you mean I'm not a Rebbe? We are playing Rebbe. I'm the Rebbe. You are the Chassid. Why are you saying I'm not a Rebbe? So his younger brother says, because a Rebbe, when you come in and you complain about something which is wrong with you, the first thing the Rebbe does, he goes, Oy. He gives a krechts, he gives a saw. He lives, he identifies with your pain. You heard my complaint, he tells his brother, even though it was a game, and there was no oi. You right away went to the solution. If you went to the solution, you're not a Rebbe. A Rebbe has to be able to identify with what the Chassid is going through. There was no oi. There was no kvetch. You just took it as is and started giving me a recipe how to take care of my problem. That's, you can go to Google. I don't need a Rebbe for that. You press in the question and Google will give you the result, and whether it's true or not, whatever, at least you're going to feel that you have some guidance. If you want to go to a Rebbe is the one who is going to give a krecht because he feels that he himself is now relating to your pain because he kind of is going it through with you. And this is really what happens to Aaron. Hashem says, who is going to build the Mishkan? Aaron. Because in order to really identify with the excitement of the people to meet with God, to identify with the yearning of the people to meet with God, to be able to bring them atonement, you need to have someone that he also has a little scratch in his disc, like they say. You remember the scratch in the discs when the floppy was not working because of a little scratch? A little scratch means he also went through something not so perfect. He's also working with himself. He was a part of the golden calf, so he knows exactly, what we are trying to do in order to get out of that difficult moment and to move on in life. And this is really in any situation, on every level, when we are trying to help others or to identify with others, it's not enough to hear about it and maybe to offer some advice. Sometimes it means that we have to get wet ourselves a little. We got to get into the situation, and everybody else's situation, not maybe at that level, but on a smaller case, on a smaller pace, but to identify, to get into the shoes, that's when you become the one who builds the Mishkan. Then when you become the one who serves, like Aaron HaKohen, serving the representative of Am Yisrael, despite being involved in the egel, in the golden calf, but not only despite, maybe just because he was involved in the egel. So he was really able now to serve as that great leader, as this great Rebbe, which is responsible for channeling the Shechina, the divine presence in our midst, then and forever. Thank you very much. And now, if you want to say something, you can unmute yourself, please. If you want to say a good night, you can also say a good night, whatever you want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you is good also.
Yeah, thank you. You kept me awake. You really kept me absorbed when I was